All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Chapman. I'm Senior Marketing Director at Kudelski IoT, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today for our webinar on Matter with a special focus on Matter security. I'm accompanied by my colleague, Fred Mathy, who's Product Director for Matter at Kudelski IoT, as well as Chris LaPré, who's Head of Technology for the Connectivity Standards Alliance. The way things are going to work today is Chris is going to kick us off with an introduction to Matter with a deep dive into the security aspects, followed by Fred, who's going to talk to us a lot more about the specific process for getting device attestation certificates and getting fully on board with Matter from a security perspective, as well as what aspects of product security should you be considering that aren't necessarily directly related to Matter. We'll be saving questions for the end. Please feel free to use the questions functionality in GoToWebinar, and we'll be happy to entertain any of these questions at the end. The first one is, will this session be recorded? And the answer to that is yes. We thank Selena Fontenot, our Solutions Marketing Manager at Kudelski IoT, for setting up all the logistics around this webinar and for making sure that it's recorded as well. With that, without any further ado, I'll kick off to Chris LaPré from CSA, and thank you for getting us started, Chris.
All right, thanks. So like Chris said, like Christopher said, I am Chris LaPré. I am the head of technology at the Connectivity Standards Alliance. I just don't know if I say this anywhere else in the slides, but we used to be the Zigbee Alliance. And I also want to mention that we are a member-driven organization. So the head of technology is a particular role in that kind of capacity. So if we could just get started here. Sure, slides work. So who is the Connectivity Standards Alliance? Like I mentioned, we used to be the Zigbee Alliance, and on the left-hand side here, you see our board of directors, all of the promoter members of the alliance. It's quite a lot of companies, and a lot of the biggest companies in the world. And on the right, who are we? We are trying to be the alliance, the group of companies that solves all the problems in the world that face the IoT today. And on the next couple of slides, you'll see what all that entails, at least for us as it exists today. But our history is that we are an open standards organization, and that's what Matter is, and why that's important will also come out in the next couple of slides. And now, in the last two years or so, we are a multi-standards organization. So we have quite a number of initiatives going on. And what we try to do is to always make sure that with every standard that we create, there is a strong certification program, which likely comes with a label, not always, but very likely comes with a label that a consumer can look at and say, yes, this gives me this value of some kind that they're seeing. And then, of course, in order to do that correctly, we need to make sure that we have market reach and influence, that now extends to regulators as well, as you'll see in the next slide or two. So jumping in a little deeper, like I mentioned, we used to be the Zigbee Alliance. We are still responsible for the Zigbee Pro stack and the Smart Energy stack and lots of other things that come with that. But in 2019, we announced that we were going to start another initiative called Matter. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next couple of slides, so I'll definitely come back to that. But one that is tightly coupled there is the data model you sort of see in the middle there on the left. So we have a data model working group. We want to make sure that both Zigbee and Matter have the same definition of a light bulb. We don't want Matter to go off and say, oh, we're defining our new light bulb and it's something different. And so developers then have to think differently about a Matter light bulb versus a Zigbee light bulb. So those need to stay in lockstep. And in order to make sure we've achieved that, we've created a data model working group that is responsible for our data model. As I said, it comes from Zigbee's history. So we have about 20 years of development of that. So lots of rich clusters, as we call them, sets of functionality sort of came in to Matter. I definitely don't want to say for free. They each take effort to put, Matter functionality around it. But we have definitions, well tested, defined by the biggest companies in the world that make light bulbs, for example, defining what a Matter or Zigbee light bulb will be. The same for door locks, smart plugs, all that. From then, from 2019 or so, when we announced Matter, we also announced a couple of other working groups. Access control. Right now, most wireless chips that support door locks, for example, define a particular technology stack and certificate that is needed to use that radio. And that therefore complicates something like a smartphone, that could potentially unlock one of those door locks. If it supports 3 radios, it needs to have 3 certificates and 3 technology stacks. So it's not necessarily a consumer-facing innovation, let's say, or standard, but it is one that's very important, that reduces fragmentation in the IoT space. So that's access control. About a year ago, we announced product security. Again, we're trying to solve the problems that face and slow down the IoT world. Interoperability is probably the biggest and first one, but product security was often mentioned as the second one. So about a year ago, we announced a product security working group. And we will hear a little bit more about this later, but not too much in this particular talk. But what that's trying to do is attempt to align all the different regions in the world that have different regulatory components on what type of requirements are put around a connected product. And so we are working with those regulatory groups to ensure that a single umbrella standard, crossing our fingers, may be able to achieve alignment or compliance, as I said, a certification program with all those different regions in the world. And that might take some doing because there are quite a number of different regulatory regions in the world. And very recently, we've announced 2 other groups. The data privacy working group is attempting to do something very similar to product security, but it is quite a different problem. Somebody like the CSA can't say what is allowed or not allowed on the data privacy side. I always use the camera company example. Someone might try to say, okay, I'm going to sell cameras to you, and I'm going to put all that data into the cloud because that's a affordable way to do that. Someone else might come to you and say, I'm going to sell cameras to you, and your data is never going to leave the house. Therefore, you need to buy this box, and all your data stays in your home. And those are 2 totally different solutions to the same problem. We, in the data privacy group, just want to make sure that it's easy for those companies to convey that information to consumers, so they know what they're actually getting in terms of the solution, the whole ecosystem solution with and how your data is being used in those solutions. We often liken it to a nutrition label. A bagel can have as many calories as it needs to, or I might make a bagel that has a little bit more calories than the next baker. But each of those are solutions that are that solve the problem, and they may have different cost benefits, but we just want to make sure that consumers are aware of what's happening with their data, and that's the data privacy working group. And the last one in the blue squares on the left is health and wellness, another one we've just recently announced. Matter is, and you'll see this again later as well, going into many different areas which are being implemented by Matter itself in the Matter working group on the upper left. Health and wellness is one that is going to for example, need data privacy to be a solved problem before we can really dive into the health and wellness space. The data sharing problem, I need to make sure I'm sharing my data with my doctor and not the wrong doctor, or by accident my neighbor. So health and wellness is set off in its own working group with a lot of different problems to solve. That group will certainly target aging in place and other wellness categories initially, again, things that Matter can solve directly. And then on the right here, you see how we sort of slice and dice our members in order to interact with them. We have close to 600 engaged members. And so how do we interact with them? We divide them up into both by industry and region. So on the left-hand side, again, you see we have an EU interest group, for example, and a China member group that allows us to interact with those regions and get technical requirements from those regions. Both of them have, for example, door lock differences in terms of what is required for a door lock to be implemented in those regions. And that's the statistics you see on the bottom on the right. And then on the top, you see that our regional breakdown is also quite balanced. So continuing to move on. So now, what is Matter? That's what you all come here for. So we targeted primarily interoperability as the primary reason for our existence. We are hoping to tear down the sort of walled gardens, as they've been called over the years, of interoperability, where if I lock myself into an ecosystem, now I'm locked into the requirements of that ecosystem and whatever they support. Matter is now supported by all the major ecosystems, and so it attempts to solve interoperability. And how do we do that? Well, we need to make sure that things are simple. If things are complicated, people aren't going to use it. So that's pretty straightforward. It has to be reliable. If it doesn't work, people aren't going to use it. And I always like to say, when we got into that room in the first, way back in 2019, interoperability was what brought us all there. It was security that was the first word out of all of our mouths. It had to be secure, right? There's no way that we were going to come out in the world and attempt to solve the interoperability problem without security being the utmost. We all know security, and you'll hear a lot more about this from our friends here. Security is an arms race to a degree. We have to make sure that we're staying ahead of different attack vectors. But we put a lot in place to make sure that we are doing our best to stay ahead of that curve. So diving a little bit deeper, what is Matter? It is an IP-based technology stack. I've already kind of described it as basically it's effectively a data model. It is this description of what devices can do. A door lock can be opened or locked, or a light switch can be toggled, for example. Those are all the commands that fit into what Matter is at the top here. We are IPv6 based. And then, so what is below that? What do we support today? Well, that is Wi-Fi as this major standard that's in all of our homes, but also Thread. Thread is a newly emerging standard. It supports mesh networks based on IP, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the future. We do support Bluetooth Low Energy for pairing, so that any smartphone can pair all these devices. And of course, Ethernet is one of those sort of easy to do kinds of IP-based standards that are also in many of our homes. And then below on the left, you do see all the different device types that we support. It is basically the standard set of command and control devices that you can get today. If you go into a Best Buy or Amazon and attempt to buy connected devices for your home. Some of the new words you might be seeing here, TVs. We do support TVs. That is a sort of a casting feature from a phone or any app or something to the TV. Play this thing on that TV, along with volume up, volume down types of commands. Bridges, I like to highlight bridges here as well. We are another standard that's coming into your attention span here. But we are not yet another standard that's just going to say, okay, throw away all those devices you have in your home today, throw those all in the dump and buy all new ones. We do not want that. We want you to continue to use the devices that are in your home, the connected smart devices in your home that work for you today. And in order to assist with that, we also support bridges. So any company that does sell you a proprietary device today, I like to liken it to a northbound, southbound side of things. So on the northbound side of the bridge, it would support Matter, and on the southbound side of the bridge, companies can support sort of whatever they want, whatever proprietary or other standard, could be Zigbee, could be Z-Wave, sets of devices that they wish to support, and again, extending the longevity of those devices you've already invested in your home. And likewise, if you already have an ecosystem in your home that already supports those devices, there's nothing stopping you from continuing to use those devices in the ecosystem. And yet another sort of innovation that we have here is something we call multi-admin, which is a feature that allows consumers to take a Matter device and use multiple ecosystems. So basically to get a light bulb and connect it to one ecosystem and then go into the ecosystem and get that device to now pair to another ecosystem. So those two features, bridges and multi-admin, should allow you to continue to use your ecosystems, to continue to use your devices that you've invested in your home, and now start to switch over to Matter as your protocol of choice in the future. And then I mentioned we'll come back to security. So we have a white paper on our website, CSAIoT.org. It goes into 10 different criteria of what went into Matter support for security. So I don't want to call out all of them. This particular slide calls out 5 of them. What I'm going to call out, I've already mentioned easy. It has to be easy. If consumers or developers have to jump through lots and lots of hoops in order to get security to work. They just won't do it. They'll end up turning it off. So Matter has an open source SDK, lots of other features that are available here that all just work out of the box. The security isn't something you need to add in later. It is the top level of security that is baked into the specification that's turned on in the SDK by default. And then the other one I like to mention here is Agile. We have, I mentioned, we have to stay ahead of the hackers, whatever you want to call that, sort of circle of life, let's call it. And so what we do is we have a very large threat model team and a very large security incident response team that are available to make sure that we're staying ahead of this. And if they do recognize some type of a threat, we are very quickly can go into our SDK and change something over if our curves aren't quite right or our encryption isn't quite right for whatever's happening in the world. We can very quickly switch to the next level of security, a new curve or a new AES key length or something like that. And then one more thing on security, relatively recently, about 2 months ago, NIST released 8425, NIST 8425, that listed out a number of other requirements for security products. And certainly by our read, if you look through what those requirements are, Matter meets all of them. So I think that's another sort of key specification here that, I'm sorry, not specification, but security definition that looks really good for Matter, and we'll see how that goes. The one I do want to call out here is software update. We do require a software update. And so that's one of the key requirements in the NIST regulation and other places around the world, and that is very critical for where we're going. And then into the future, looking further into the future, so I mentioned the set of device types 3 or 4 slides ago. We have lots and lots of different groups that are working on new device types, and we have also announced twice yearly releases. So we're actually coming up on our first release here in the spring, so it's about 2 or 3 months away, and then we'll have more features coming in the fall. As well. So this is mostly new devices as well as other types of improvements and updates. And you can see here on the list of devices that we have active, the ones I do want to call out are cameras and doorbell cameras in particular. That's a key work area for us. Another one that we're putting a lot of effort into is access points and border routers. How can, if I get my internet access from a cable provider or whoever it is, how can I interact with that box that today doesn't have any buttons on it? What's the right method of interaction for me to add IoT devices into my home if that's the right thing? And then the other one I want to mention on this particular slide is energy management. This is sort of a pet area of mine. Again, I'm the head of technology of a member-driven organization, so it's a pet project of mine, but lots and lots of companies are here working on this and putting the effort in as well. But with a network like Matter in your home that can cross the boundaries of the ecosystems and the various ecosystems that exist in our homes, this now opens up an energy management system that is much easier to manage going into the future. It can discover what we call large flexible loads like an electric vehicle charger or other generation types of devices, your water heaters in your home as well, and then help you save money. The cost of energy changes during the day, the effectiveness of your solar panels change during the day. All of that can be relatively simply managed by a system in your home. And right now, most of these energy management systems require you to buy lots of hardware, have proprietary methods of interacting with some of those devices. And Matter in particular is breaking down a lot of those barriers that allow for that to happen, and should really revolutionize the way that energy availability is happening around the world. And so it's an extremely important problem that, again, I really feel pretty strongly about. And then just to sum everything up that I've said, so we've talked a lot about consumers. Matter simplifies the experience for consumers, the onboarding experience, the ability to connect devices with multiple ecosystems in their home, as well as maintain the devices that they have. For developers, because of the SDK that I mentioned, it really is a develop once, deploy everywhere, which some of the ways of the older works with programs really did require you to have multiple bodies of code if you did want to work with all the different ecosystems. Retailers as well should be able to benefit from not having that kind of return problem. If I thought this might work with some box that I had in my house and it doesn't, well, I'm going to go ahead and return that device. And lots of these connected devices can't really be resold. They have to be sent back to the manufacturer. So it really simplifies that experience for retailers. And we didn't really talk about it in this slide deck here, but for commercial builders, it does simplify things for them as well to be able to build homes, to build smart homes, and provide devices to the future homeowner, and hand those devices over to the homeowner in a much simpler fashion. And I think that's my last slide. Yep. So here is the CSA and other ways that you can interact with us. And then, of course, CSA-IoT.org is how you can come and join us if you want to contribute. And I think now I'm passing it over to Fred.
Yes, thank you, Chris. So I'm Fred Mathy, as said by Christopher in the beginning. I'm product director at Kudelski IoT, in charge of the Matter solution and the IoT security solution that we provide to our customer. Today I will talk a little bit about the commissioning process for Matter and how to get your certificates. I will also talk a little bit about the overall provisioning process for IoT devices and the IoT security requirements for deploying some such devices. First, let me just introduce quickly Kudelski Group. So I'm working for Kudelski IoT, which is part of the Kudelski Group. That is a more than 70 years company, innovation company, security leadership, trying to protect our customer revenue and reputation. We've done that for the last 30 years with Pay TV solution, and with ski data for public access solution, with cyber security solution with Kudelski Security. And we started 5 or 6 years ago with Kudelski IoT to provide solution for IoT device and manufacturer and IoT chipset manufacturer. So in the last 30 years, we have had some more than 500 million device provision, protected and managed by our Kudelski Group security solution that are deployed now. So coming back to the Matter subjects, the first step for Matter to be onboarded in the Matter ecosystem, the smart home, is the commissioning. And for that, each device needs to have a device attestation certificate that is used to prove its identity and that it's compatible with the Matter ecosystem. So it means that each device needs a unique identity and a unique certificate to be onboarded on the device and on the network. And to have that, so the device manufacturer needs to have a PKI that is generating these certificates. This PKI needs to be attested by the CSA and Chris and his team to be a product attestation authority. Then you can create a product attestation intermediate that will create the certificates, and they will be integrated at the manufacturing process to be used in the field. So at Kudelski IoT, we have a service that is ready for that. So the Connectivity Standard Alliance has defined some requirements to have certificate authorities. It requires some security, so it requires some time to put in place and some expertise. And we've discovered and we found that in the IoT ecosystem, we have a lot of companies that can get help on that. So we have experience in providing this kind of identity for set-top boxes in the past for IoT device. And we have adapted our Keystream platform, our PKI as a service, to be able to issue Matter compliance certificate and deliver them to your factory. So it's allowed you to focus on the innovation and sales of your products. And then we can provide you a cost-efficient and scalable way to get all these certificates for your devices. So quickly, how to get your DAC. So if you need device attestation certificates, you can contact us on our website. You can access your account on Keystream with our PKI as a service. Then you can use some test certificates to go to the certification process. And when you are ready, you can order a batch of certificates on our portal and deliver them to your factory. We are one of the few companies that are tested as a non-VID scope product attestation authority, so you can come to us. We have also other companies that are doing that. We are not the only one. Talking a little bit about the big picture of credential management. So Matter requires certificates to be onboarded on the network, but an IoT device requires more credential to connect to different services. So it needs a credential to authenticate on the cloud instance, on the FOTA server, on the other standard that your device may need to connect. So to do that, you need to be able to generate this credential, meaning that you need to have a PKI that can generate different kind of credentials, of certificates for each use case. Then the next question is how to provision this credential in the device. So it can be done at the factory, or it can also be done in the field to have update of a credential later. It can also be done at the chipset level, so you can also integrate provision the certificate at a chipset level that you can use later in your device. So once this is done, then you can use this credential in the field to secure the functions, like the cloud onboarding, but it can also be used to secure the firmware update mechanism. So if you have the right credential in your device in the backend and have the right security on your device with secure boot and so on, then you are able to do a secure firmware update over GR. And then you can sign the firmware on the backend, send it to your device, be authenticated on the device side, and apply when it's secure. And the last step of this credential management is to also be able to renew them when they are in the field, to manage them in the field. So you may want to renew some certificates, some credentials, you want to revoke them later, or you can also want to add new to a device that is already deployed. For example, you deploy a FOTA update to your devices that brings a new functionality, and that needs to have a new credential to connect to a server. Then you need to have the PKI that is able to generate this new credential, to deploy, to provision it in the field to the device so they can use it. If we have a look at the OWASP IoT Top 10, so having the credential management done for all your services, then it helps on half of the points here. So it will, if you have proper credential management, you don't need to have hard-coded password or weak password on your device. You can deploy the credential that are used to authenticate. Then if you have the credential to enable TLS or SFTP services, then you can do everything in secure network. You can also use the credential, as I said, for the update mechanism. So you have everything that you need to have the secure FOTA. You have the tools also to store and securely store and transfer the data. So you can sign it, you can encrypt the data also and send it to your cloud service. And if you have the capabilities to manage a credential in the field and to manage the firmware update in the field, then you have a first glimpse into the device management solution. But the question is, what about the 5 other points? So if you want to have make sure that you have a default secure settings that are secure, or you want to make sure that you have a physical hardening of your device, or you have a secure ecosystem interfaces, then there is more than credential that is needed. You will need to have someone that will have a look at your device, at how it's implemented, start to dig a little bit in it and see if we can find something that is not good. So at Kudelski IoT, that's how we based our pillars. We have 3 main pillars. The first one is to help people understand what is IoT security. So we have a training for the companies that wants to bring their developers or their employees in it, and you can have hands-on workshop with our IoT security experts that will explain you what is IoT security, what is the common attacks on a device. And then we can also help you having a security assessment of your existing solution by taking your device and giving them to our hackers that will be very happy to try to break it and extract the secrets or see what they can do. And then at the end of this stage, you have a good understanding of what is your security posture. And then we can also help you on designing the right security mechanism in your solution and do the security architecture for your solution. Then the second step, the second pillar for us is Keystream. So as we've seen, we have a PKI as a service that is part of Keystream. The FOTA mechanism that is also part of that. So we can provide the credential for the FOTA. We can provide the signing service for your firmware. And we do also provide some the full campaign management for your device if you need, and also monitoring of this device and the vulnerabilities that are associated to that. And our third pillar is about secure solution. So we apply all this security practice to ourselves to develop our solution. We have an asset tracking solution that is in the field today. We use Keystream for the credential management for the FOTA. We have also our digital key, phone ASCII solution that is using Keystream for the credential management to know which smartphone has access to which asset at which time, and being able to revoke this authorization in the field. And for all of that, we do also use our services to do a threat assessment and risk analysis to understand what are the threats to a full solution and what are the risks associated to the threats, and we design the right level of security in our solution. So one last slide about our security offering. It's a holistic offering from chip to cloud. We can understand and help you on the security standard and how to comply with them. The threat assessment at the device level, at the function level, at the whole solution level to really understand the threats. We can also do a device security analysis, so give your device to our hackers. We have a secure IP to protect the keys in the chipset. The PKI as a service. Once the credentials are generated in our PKI as a service, then there is a question of provisioning. So we help device manufacturer to securely provision the credential at the factory. And we have also a solution to help device and chipset manufacturer to do provisioning in the field. Then there is the signing service, firmware updates, and the last part is the security lifecycle, monitoring and management. So being able to monitor the firmware to see if there is a new vulnerabilities that is associated to a library that you're using in your firmware. Then we will help you understand, is it a real threat to your business model today or not? And if yes, you should update it or not. And then we provide also the management to update the keys and credentials in the field. So I hope I was able to give you a quick overview on the Matter provisioning process and the IoT security at a broader view. And thank you for your time. I will let back Christopher.
Thank you, Fred and Chris. I'm going to encourage our audience to start putting any questions they might have in the questions functionality and GoToWebinar. But in the meanwhile, I'm just going to summarize real quick. And based on the attendance at this webinar, we were impressed to see just a really wide variety of people from across the value chain, from device manufacturers to semiconductor manufacturers as well, who are looking to learn more about how to help their customers get ready for Matter, as well as other members of the value chain as well. So there's clearly a very broad interest for Matter. It's a compelling value proposition, both to the industry in order to be able to sell more devices into homes, as well as for consumers who are going to be able to enjoy more interoperability and better privacy and security with those same devices. So thanks for that excellent overview. On the security side, in addition, there's Matter certificates, which are a critical part of the overall Matter infrastructure. Some companies who are the bigger companies out there in the world are trying to do this themselves. But for most companies, it's probably pretty much an impossibility to have that level of expertise in-house to be able to do that. And that's why there are companies like Kudelski IoT and others who can help you with that, as well as, in general, all of the aspects of product security that need to be considered in order to protect your revenue and reputation. So I'm not seeing any questions coming up right now. So gentlemen, I'd just like to offer you the opportunity while people take their last moments to think up any questions, if there's any final words that you would like to say about where Matter is going in the future. Chris, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for inviting me here to talk about Matter. It's definitely great to be able to get that message out to the audience in terms of what Matter is. The only other one that I guess I'd mention, sort of just to sum things up, is health and wellness. Like I said, we just announced that. It is certainly a big field to be going after, and there's definitely a call to action there, I think, for lots of companies out there that are focused on health and wellness that aren't necessarily the same companies that we interact with on a daily basis. And so that's probably the one thing I'd say. And again, thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, we're grateful to you for bringing your expertise to the table. Fred, any final messages you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, maybe just sharing that Matter is doing a very good job on providing requirements and guidelines for security. We really appreciate to see standards that are taking security seriously and putting some good practice with the device attestation security certificates to onboard on the ecosystem. And I hope that we can continue to work with them. So we are part of the device security group as Kudelski IoT, and we're also part of different working groups in Matter to help drive the standard with a good approach on IoT security.
Well, thanks, Fred, and to our audience, we really appreciate you attending. If you have any questions for us, you can see how to get a hold of us below at www.kudelski-iot.com. We really look forward to having the opportunity to support your growth with Matter and to help you answer any of the difficult security questions that you have. We've got 72 years of experience behind our belts to help you do that, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we wish you all the best of luck and good business in implementing Matter, whether it's on a chipset level, a device level, ecosystem level. We're here to help. So thank you for joining us, and we wish you an excellent rest of your day wherever you are.